Okay, we're going to briefly discuss the very short chapter on Ortega y Gasset. Now, this is the first chapter from a book called The Revolt or Rebellion of the Masses. It was written by the Spanish philosopher Jose Ortega y Gasset back in the 1920s. And the essential argument is this. Ortega recognizes two fundamentally distinct types of human beings that have always existed in society. And he classifies them into these two groups, the mass man and the select individual. The mass man, according to Ortega, is the commonplace individual who does not place any specific or special demands on himself, who is smugly or comfortably mediocre or average. The mass man does not hold himself to a high standard, does not have a passion for excellence, does not want to become better than he is, but is content to remain as he always has been. The select individual, by contrast, is that rare, exceptional type of human being who strives with all of his or her soul and heart and mind to be superior, to be the best he or she can be. The select individual has a passion for excellence and does not rest until he or she achieves the desired goals. Now, you can see certain parallels with Nietzsche's master and slave morality. Right? You'll recall that for Nietzsche, right, the aristocratic human being is one who aims to become almost a godlike being, who loves challenges and obstacles because it gives them the opportunity to overcome themselves, to become better, to triumph over adversity and attain true excellence or virtue. And it's very similar to the description that Ortega gives of the select individual. Consider the following quote. Then there are activities in society which by their very nature call for qualifications. Activities and functions of the most diverse order which are special and cannot be carried out without special talent. Thus, artistic and aesthetic enterprises, the functioning of government, political judgment on public matters. Previously, these special activities were in the hands of qualified minorities, or those alleged to be qualified. The masses did not try or aspire to intervene. They reckoned that if they did, they must acquire those special graces and must cease being part of the mass. They knew their role well enough in a dynamic and functioning social order. So, although Ortega recognizes that as long as humanity has existed, there have been these two distinct classes of human beings or types, the mass man and the select minority, that until very recently, until the 20th century, these two classes of human beings or types were distinct, or they knew their place, if you will. Those areas, those domains of civilized life that require specialized skill or talent, namely the arts, statesmanship, anything involving the government, and also education, that these areas were the exclusive domain of individuals of great talent and accomplishment. And these were the select minorities. And it was simply assumed that these areas, these three key areas, the arts, government, and education, would be governed by people that had exceptional talent. And the mass man would stay out of those areas because he knew that he was not qualified to enter into those areas. So society functioned organically and smoothly until very recently. What has happened in late modernity, starting in the early 20th century, at least according to Ortega, is that the mass man has decided to insinuate himself into these higher areas of society, the arts, government, and education, and feels that he deserves a spot at the highest areas of society. And that is the great shock to Western civilization. So essentially what Ortega, who is clearly an elitist, is talking about here is that we have a situation in which society has lost sight of the distinction between the high and the low, between excellence and mediocrity, and that we have this phenomenon known as hyper-democracy, which is a kind of tyranny of the majority, whereby the mass man takes over the entire society, takes over government, education, the arts, and brings with him all the attitudes of the mass man, namely the low standards, the contentedness with being mediocre, the unwillingness to reach for excellence, and one might add a sense of entitlement. And that this phenomenon has basically degraded Western culture and civilization. So it's a very pessimistic analysis that he gives. Now, whether you agree with him or not is really up to you to decide upon careful examination, no doubt. But he concludes his first chapter of his book, Rebellion of the Masses, by saying, the mass crushes everything different, everything outstanding, excellent, individual, select, and choice.